especially in the mobile and digital area. So this next speaker is actually going to kind of help hit that theme a little bit harder for us too. He comes from Disney as well. He's a very good friend of mine, Josh Gorin here. He was an executive R&D Imagineer. And he's going to talk to us about, again, more of the communication of how the digital world is actually impacting our guests. So, without further ado, Josh Gorin.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're in the home stretch. This is, it's really so much fun to be here. This is my first SATE. I'm definitely hooked. This has been an amazing 2 days. I've met a lot of great people, seen a lot of old friends. So thank you so much for having me. It's thrilling to be here. I apologize for my voice. I caught Mark's cold backstage. I apologize. So I was asked here today to talk a little bit about guest expectations and how they're evolving, especially as that relates to the digital devices that are increasingly a part of and in some cases defining our lives. Back in Imagineering in Glendale, I helped lead a program called Experience Design and Integration. And this is a new joint effort that we're trying between our creative, our business, and our technology teams to look at the stories we tell, not just on an attraction level, not just on a land level, not even just on a park level, but on an entire guest experience level. And the moment our guests say, maybe we should go on vacation, all the way through learning, planning, buying, booking, reserving, checking in, getting your picture taken, food and beverage, merchandise, imaging, attractions, entertainment, operations, all the way through to that marketing relationship after the fact. How do we tell one piece of story, knowing that in our organization, as I'm sure many of yours, those are many discrete groups? And so experience design and integration is about how do we create a seamlessly interwoven guest experience. But first I want to talk a little bit about guest expectations and how much the world is changing and how rapidly it's changing. And I love these two pictures because I think it really shows just how far we've come in just a short amount of time. You think about what an 8-year-old in 1955 here at Disneyland opened, what kind of entertainment landscape was available to them versus what an 8-year-old today in 2015 has at their disposal. It's really shocking. And it's really exciting too because things are accelerating so rapidly. But it's also changing fundamentally how we see the world. And in fact, this is a study that came out of a new study from Microsoft, which has been oft-cited, which talks about how in 2000, they registered that the average attention span was about 12 seconds, and in 2013, it was about 8, and most notably, they compared that to the attention span of a goldfish, which was 9. And so, the theory being postulated is that our increasingly digital world has actually rewired our brains and has changed our tolerance for information, the speed at which we intake information, and our ability to focus on specific bits of information. And certainly, this is a trend that is only accelerating. The digitization of our lives, and I would imagine many of the people in this room, is rapid. And if you look at some of the predictions, obviously lots of people have lots of different predictions, it's only going to grow. Smartphone penetration going anywhere from depending on the US, 2/3 to 3/4 penetration in just a year or two. The Internet of Things, mobile wearable devices, connected cars. We're really going to get to a place where at no point in time are we really and truly off the grid. And so that leads me to how this relates to what we all do, which is themed entertainment design and the digitization, quote unquote, of the themed entertainment experience. And for a lot of us, myself included, this is profoundly frightening. This is profoundly scary. And I know this is not a fearful group because I just watched you all take something that was handed to you by a stranger on a college campus and put it in your mouth. So I know this is not a scared group, but this is profoundly scary because when you take the digitization of the themed experience, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of the antithetical of all of the core tenets that we were founded on. When you think about hugely immersive and spectacular places, and you think about distilling that down to a tiny little screen. When you think about how phones and mobile devices are becoming increasingly commonplace and everyday, when what we're all trying to do is create the uncommon, the once in a lifetime. And when you think about how we work so hard to keep our thematic worlds internally consistent, so consistent that we put giant mounds of dirt around the perimeter, and we call it a berm, or we close things in walls. We want to keep the outside world out so we can keep the inside world in. And these devices, they're just poking holes left and right. They're letting the outside world in, they're taking the inside world out. And on top of that, beyond spaces and placemaking, how's that affecting the social dynamic inside our experiences, right? A lot of us create experiences, and what draws us to this industry is our ability to bring people together, right? To have social, meaningful interaction in real life, face-to-face. And so what happens when these devices become so permeated into how we interact with each other that this becomes your typical experience at, say, a theme park? And so then we're faced with sort of a tough choice. We can try to block it. We can try to build the world's largest Faraday cage and just airdrop it right onto our parks and see how that goes. Probably not well. We could try collecting phones at the gate. I also don't think that would go very well. So blocking it is going to be hard. We could ignore it. We could just pretend it's not there. But what's going to happen is someone else is going to fill in that space. I spend a lot of time in our parks and in your parks and other people's experiences, and it's permeating. Or we can embrace it. And so what I want to postulate today is 3 ways that I feel that these trends can actually help us as opposed to detract. Can actually make the experience better, not worse. Can actually be part of it, not separate. And so first, I think it's in the area of convenience. I'll talk a little bit about that. Personalization, and then this idea of story layering. So first, let's talk about convenience. So digital technologies, mobile technologies, social technologies, internet technologies are making our lives hopefully a lot simpler. And a lot of industries are moving to this very, very quickly. How many of you, for example, have pre-ordered a burrito at Chipotle or a drink from Starbucks on your mobile device and just sort of walked in and bought it? Okay, only a few. Once you try it, you get hooked. So much so that I actually went to a Chipotle and there was a long line, and I just sat at the booth, ordered online, and waited for my order to be ready, because why would I stand over there when I can sit over here? And so, one of the things that we're seeing is this increasing variety of ways to take the functional, transactional parts of our lives and move them onto digital platforms. And those aren't platforms that we all necessarily have to build, they're platforms that other people are building, like Google Pay and Apple Pay. For example, down here, this is a South Korean market, quote-unquote, a virtual market in a subway station, where guests can take their mobile phone and scan codes on these just printed shelves, and their virtual shopping cart is then delivered to them later that day. A way to take some downtime in a subway station, turn that into shopping time with no actual inventory required. How many of you use Apple Pay or use your phone to pay for something? Yeah, I mean, it's addictive, right? Once, now, I'm like, oh, I gotta pull out a credit card? Oh, so hard. And similarly, services like Amazon Fresh, delivery services, we're just expecting now the world to be on demand. And so what does that mean? Folks aren't going to leave those expectations behind when they come to our parks and our places and our spaces. So the digital devices then become an extremely efficient way to separate the fun from the functional, right? And we can start to take all those pieces that were not part of our storytelling and extract them and offload them on the device, either before the visit, after the visit, or during the visit, so that we can focus on the fun. Because if we're trying to make a compelling merchandise retail experience, pulling out your wallet is just sort of taking you out of that. So the functional and the fun, the separation of these digital platforms provide is really exciting, and it's something that we're seeing in programs that are already in place, things like My Magic Plus and the Magic Band. Guests really respond to the idea of getting all those details out of the way so that I can focus on the internet. So convenience and things outside the story are really exciting for digital devices. Another area that's really exciting is this concept of personalization, right? And we are seeing more and more in a variety of industries that personalization is becoming not a bonus, not a niche, but part of the norm. So for example, there are services like Stitch Fix and Trunk Club, where you provide a little bit of information, and a personal stylist will send you recommendations. You keep what you want, you send back what you want. And Netflix, as we know, has done a huge amount of work, technical and otherwise, to make more meaningful recommendations to people to help understand their tastes and recommend what's next. Amazon's doing the same thing. Google Now is anticipating your needs. You've even got premium mobile phone services with one-button touches to concierge. And now increasingly with things like the new Apple TV, with the Amazon Echo, we're actually having these personalized concierge level services in our home in a really automated way. Now the challenge with personalization for a lot of us is a lot of us design in physical space. And when you build a thing, it's very hard to make that thing different for you than it is for you or for you, right? The thing is the thing. But the digital device allows me to change the context, the meaning of that thing to you individually. And so what you start to see is we can create the same base level experiences, the same physical spaces, but use the digital device to change the context. So you're coming into a restaurant because we recommended it to you, but you're coming into a restaurant because you're on a secret mission, and that's how the clues can be delivered. And you're in the restaurant because you're actually an expert at this game that you've been playing all along over multiple visits, right? So the idea of creating spaces that in their essence are the same, but that the context the guest brings to it changes based on the meanings that we've reviewed through digital and other media, social media as well. And that's what's really fun and exciting, to see multiple guests using the space in different ways. And what happens is you sort of become the center of the universe, and everyone else are just extras in your movie. And that's really nice, because I think part of what's so aspirational of these experiences is, you know, making you the hero, making you the center of the universe. And then lastly, this idea of story layering. So this is something that we're seeing very frequently. We hear a lot about gamification, right? And gamification is incredibly powerful. I spend a lot of time studying gamification, and yet I am ultimately a huge sucker for it. I have to get all those Starbucks stars. I even have, this is actually my dog. She wears a collar that tracks her activity. And if she doesn't get her requisite amount of minutes of activity per day, I lose my streak, I don't get my award. I'm very, very upset. So she gets a lot of exercise because of my obsessiveness. And so this idea of, it's almost like the heads-up display in a video game. The idea of a digital device not trying to take away from an experience, not trying to mediate that experience through a tiny little screen, not trying to distract from the experience, but being sort of your virtual wallet, your scorekeeper, your narrative teller, your image keeper. The ability for this to bring on new layers of storytelling, again, through that lens of personalization, through what's unique to you, what you care about versus what you care about versus what you care about. And we think that this is really an exciting way to take what today may be a series of episodic, individual, siloed experiences and connect them into a larger narrative. So instead of, I did a 4-minute attraction here, then I went to a 30-minute show here, then I saw a thing here, how do we start to weave that together in a more meaningful, compelling, engaging way? See, at the end, it's not what did you ride, or what did you see, or where did you visit, but what is your story? And the digital devices and the layering they provide are a really exciting opportunity to help guests assemble and engage their own digital story, especially when we start to bring in things like video and audio and photos and bonus content and games and things of the like. And so the idea of having a central core experience where each of your guests are experiencing it at different layers, at different levels, and choosing the amount to which they want to engage. Again, I don't think any of us would advocate that this becomes a mandatory part of the experience, because everyone's going to come at these slightly differently. But for people who want to lean forward and engage in a more deep, lean forward approach, how do we do that? And the digital devices provide a really great scalable platform to make that happen. So, talked about convenience, talked about personalization, talked about layering, but for those of you whose attention spans are slightly longer than 8 seconds, you remember we also had this point about attention. And the truth is, yes, these devices are empirically changing the way and the pace of information and the way that it's being absorbed by all sorts of people. Here are just 3 graphs that are somewhat illustrative. So on the left here, these are a study of Hollywood films from 1930 to 2010. In the upper left-hand corner is average shot length. On the upper right is visual activity. On the upper left is a correlation of the two. And on the right is luminance. So movies are also getting darker, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's a whole different topic. But the speed at which films are being edited and the amount of motion is increasing. Here in the middle, you can see the likelihood of your Facebook post getting a meaningful response based on the length of it. And you can see a sharp, sharp drop-off over 140 characters. So you really got to keep it short, down to 140 characters. And on the right, this This is how many people actually watch a YouTube video all the way through. And again, you see a very, very sharp drop-off, a very large hockey stick there in the downward direction when the movies get too long. So, what does this mean? Does this mean 8-second rides, right? 8-second parades? They just run by. Yeah! Since you have short attention spans, I'll just say no. That's not what I'm saying. But I think what we do have to understand is that this could be seen as a negative. People are getting bored too easily. We've changed the way we consume information. But I'm going to flip it and choose to say it's more of a positive. And that we have become much more sophisticated consumers of content. We've become much more savvy in how we interpret visual and auditory inputs. We're able to digest information faster. In fact, we look at things like the increasing prevalence of second screen entertainment, that people watching television now more than ever have some sort of second device. And rather than reporting a decreased level of satisfaction with the content they're watching, they're actually seeing an increased level of satisfaction. So our brains are being rewired in such a way that we're actually able to take in more, that we're actually able to understand better. And this means that the same core principles that all of us use in themed entertainment and placemaking are just as relevant as ever. Using architecture and color and font and form to draw the user's eye. Using things like visual indicators, sound, touch, taste, smell, all the things we've been talking about over the last 2 days, those become tools that our audiences are becoming better at reading faster. And so our ability to tell stories is only magnified because our audience is ready to hear those stories even better. And in fact, it all goes back to a theme that I think I've definitely been hearing sitting out there listening to all these speakers, which is truly and fundamentally a focus on the guest, right? A focus on the individual, a focus on the person and what they want and what they need and what they aspire to. And rather than ignore the supercomputers in their pocket that they're bringing with us that have become such an intrinsic part of who they are that you simply can't separate the two, we have the opportunity to activate stories in whole new ways and to communicate with a digital literacy that can someday hopefully match our ability to communicate through architectural literacy or visual literacy or media literacy. And I think this is an inflection point where we're going to start seeing some really exciting stuff where the digital and the physical come together in new ways. And I couldn't be more thrilled to see what you all do. We're working on some really exciting stuff. And it's been an absolute pleasure to hear all this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.